You're not in the business of buying stocks. You're in the business of selling shovels. It's 1849, the California gold rush. Tens of thousands of prospectors are flooding the West, dreaming of striking it rich. But you're smarter. You know that for every lucky soul who finds a gold nugget, 1,000 will go home with empty pockets and broken dreams. So instead of digging for gold yourself, you sell the tools. You sell the shovels, the pickaxes, the pans. And while the prospectors gamble their fortunes on a sliver of hope, you make a guaranteed profit. Your business isn't about luck. It's about providing the essential infrastructure, the one thing every single prospector needs, regardless of whether they succeed or fail. Fast forward to today. We are in the middle of a new gold rush. It's not for a shiny metal, but for something far more valuable: artificial intelligence. And once again, everyone is rushing in. Tech giants, startups, entire nations are pouring billions of dollars into this new frontier, all hoping to strike digital gold. But just like in 1849, there's one company that isn't digging. Instead, it's selling the shovels. It is a company that has quietly positioned itself to profit from every single player in this AI race. This company is Nvidia. And the man who saw it all coming, the one who started selling shovels before anyone even knew there was a gold rush, is Jensen Huang. He walks on stage, always in his signature black leather jacket, looking more like a rock star than the CEO of a multi-trillion-dollar corporation. He speaks with an unnerving calm, a quiet confidence that borders on prophetic. He doesn't shout or boast. He doesn't have to. The world hangs on his every word. He announces new chips, new records, new breakthroughs, and with each sentence, stock markets surge or plummet. A single man in a leather jacket, holding the entire global economy in the palm of his hand. How did this happen? How did a company that most people knew for making gaming graphics cards, the things that made our video games look pretty, suddenly become the most critical company on the planet? How did it become the indispensable shovel seller of the 21st century? To understand, you have to go back, way back, before AI was a buzzword, before crypto, before the metaverse. You have to go back to a time when Nvidia was just another scrappy Silicon Valley startup fighting for survival in the brutal, cutthroat world of computer graphics. In the late 90s, the battle wasn't for AI dominance, it was for the soul of your PC. The war was over 3D gaming. Companies like 3DFX, ATI, and Matrox were locked in a deathmatch. Every few months, a new faster graphics card would hit the shelves, promising more polygons, smoother frame rates, and more realistic textures. It was a relentless cycle of innovation and obsolescence. For a while it looked like Nvidia might not make it. Their early products were buggy, their competitors were fierce, and the market was unforgiving. But Jensen Huang had a different vision. He wasn't just thinking about the next game. He saw that these specialized processors they were building for graphics, these things called GPUs or graphics processing units, had a hidden potential. A typical computer processor, a CPU, is a jack of all trades. It's designed to handle a wide variety of tasks one after another very quickly. Think of it as a brilliant chef who can cook any dish you ask for, but can only cook one dish at a time. The GPU, on the other hand, is different. It's a specialist. It's not as smart as a CPU, but it's designed to do thousands of simple, repetitive calculations all at once, in parallel. Think of it as an army of line cooks, each one chopping a single vegetable. They can't cook a whole meal, but together they can prep an enormous amount of food incredibly fast. This parallel processing power was perfect for rendering complex 3D scenes in video games, which is just millions of simple math problems happening simultaneously. But Jensen saw beyond gaming. He realized that this same architecture, this army of simple calculators, could be used for other things. Scientific simulations, financial modeling, weather prediction, any problem that could be broken down into thousands of smaller parallel tasks was a potential market. It was a revolutionary idea. He was looking at his gaming hardware and seeing the foundation for a new kind of computing, a supercomputer on a desktop. But there was a massive problem. These GPUs were notoriously difficult to program. Writing code for them was like speaking a completely alien language. It required a deep specialized knowledge of hardware architecture. It was a dark art, practiced by only a handful of elite programmers in the world. So while his competitors were laser-focused on squeezing out a few more frames per second in the latest blockbuster game, Jensen made a bet. A huge, company-risking bet. He poured resources not just into building faster hardware, but into making that hardware easy to use. He diverted his best engineers, his brightest minds, to solve the software problem. His rivals thought he was crazy. He was wasting precious time and money on a niche academic pursuit while they were winning the gaming wars. They were selling shovels to gamers. Jensen was trying to build a new kind of shovel for a mine that didn't even exist yet. The result of this bet would change the world. It was a secret weapon forged in the fires of the graphics card wars that would give Nvidia an insurmountable lead for decades to come. The first glimpse of this weapon came with the GeForce 256 in 1999, which Nvidia marketed as the world's first GPU. It was a statement of intent. They weren't just making graphics cards anymore. They were making general-purpose parallel processors. But the real revolution, the masterstroke, was still to come. This was just the prelude. The hardware was getting powerful, but it was still locked in its cage, accessible only to a chosen few. Jensen needed to give everyone the key. He needed to build a bridge from the esoteric world of hardware to the vast world of software developers. And then in 2006 it happened. The world was obsessed with the first iPhone. Facebook was just opening up to the public, and the concept of the cloud was still in its infancy. In this environment, Nvidia released something that, to most people, sounded incredibly boring. It was a software platform, a set of tools for programmers. It didn't have a flashy name. It wasn't a cool gadget, but it was the key that would unlock the power of the GPU for everyone. It would turn their gaming cards into engines of scientific discovery and, eventually, artificial intelligence. It was the culmination of Jensen's decade-long gamble, the invisible foundation upon which their future empire would be built. Suddenly, scientists and researchers who had been struggling for years to use GPUs for their work had a simple, elegant solution. They could now write code in familiar languages like C and have it run at lightning speed on Nvidia hardware. It was like going from writing in ancient hieroglyphs to writing in plain English. The floodgates opened. In labs and universities around the world, a quiet revolution began. Astrophysicists used it to simulate galactic collisions. Biologists used it to model protein folding. Wall Street quants used it to price complex financial derivatives in real time. Nvidia had given the world a supercomputer, and they were finding endless uses for it. All while the rest of the tech world was still looking at GPUs and seeing nothing but video games. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Big Bang of modern AI. It was a computer vision competition called ImageNet. For years, the world's best algorithms had struggled to teach computers to reliably recognize objects in pictures. Progress was slow, incremental. Then in 2012, a team from the University of Toronto submitted an entry that didn't just beat the competition, it annihilated it. Their algorithm, called AlexNet, achieved an error rate so dramatically lower than anyone else's that it looked like a typo. The secret to their success. They had trained their deep neural network, a type of AI modeled on the human brain, on 2 Nvidia gaming GPUs. It was the proof, the confirmation of Jensen's vision. The immense parallel processing power of GPUs was the perfect match for the massive computational demands of deep learning. AI had found its engine, and Nvidia was the only company selling it. From that moment on, the AI gold rush was on, and Nvidia was the only company with shovels. Every researcher, every startup, every tech giant from Google to Meta to Amazon needed GPUs. Lots of them. They built massive data centers filled with tens of thousands of Nvidia cards, creating the AI factories that now power everything from your voice assistant to the recommendation engine that chose this video for you. The demand exploded and Nvidia's stock price went stratospheric. They had created a market and they completely owned it. For years, competitors like AMD and Intel tried to catch up. They built their own chips, they launched their own software initiatives, but they were a decade behind. Nvidia wasn't just selling hardware, they were selling an entire ecosystem. A universe of software, libraries, and developer tools built over 20 years. This brings us to today. The world is on the cusp of another monumental shift. Generative AI models like ChatGPT that can create text, images, and code that is indistinguishable from human work. And what powers this new revolution? You guessed it. Tens of thousands of Nvidia's latest, most powerful GPUs, working together in colossal clusters. Nvidia has become more than just a chip company. It is the fundamental infrastructure layer of the AI economy. Their latest H100 chip is the most complex piece of silicon ever created, and the demand is so high that they literally can't make them fast enough. Countries are now talking about sovereign AI, the need to build their own AI infrastructure to remain competitive, and that means buying massive quantities of Nvidia hardware. Jensen Huang isn't just a CEO anymore. He's a kingmaker, deciding which companies and which nations get access to the future. But hardware is only half the story. Even if competitors built a faster chip, they would still fail, because Nvidia built an invisible trap 20 years ago that makes escape impossible. And that trap is called CUDA. This is the story of the most successful trap in modern history. It isn't made of steel or stone. It's made of code. And it's a trap that the most powerful companies in the world have willingly, even eagerly, walked into. This is the story of how one company built an empire, not on sand, but on silicon. At the heart of this empire is a concept called CUDA. Imagine a beautiful, lush garden surrounded by an impossibly high wall. Inside this garden, everything you could ever need to build miracles is provided for you. The tools are perfect, the soil is fertile, and the results are breathtaking. Developers, the architects of our digital world, absolutely love this garden. They've spent over a decade planting their projects here, nurturing them, watching them grow into the sprawling AI applications that now define our era. From the recommendation algorithms that decide what you see online, to the generative models creating art and text, to the complex simulations predicting climate change, they all grew in this garden. But here's the catch. The garden has a rule. Everything built inside stays inside. The tools, the techniques, the years of accumulated expertise, they only work within the garden's walls. And the name of this beautiful, inescapable garden is CUDA. And who owns the garden, the walls, and the gate? Nvidia. This isn't just a metaphor. This is the strategic reality that underpins the entire AI industry. When you write code using CUDA, you are writing it specifically for Nvidia's hardware. It's a proprietary language, a closed ecosystem. Porting years of complex, highly optimized code to another platform isn't just difficult. It's a monumental undertaking, often bordering on impossible. It would mean abandoning the perfect tools, leaving the fertile soil, and starting from scratch outside the walls, in the barren wilderness. So developers don't leave. Companies don't leave. They've invested too much. Their entire technological stack, their most valuable intellectual property, is intertwined with Nvidia's platform. This is the CUDA moat, a strategic barrier so deep and wide that competitors can't cross it. It's not a prison people want to escape from. It's a paradise they can't afford to leave. And every day they stay, the walls grow a little higher. This dependency, this lock-in, is the invisible foundation of Nvidia's power. It's why, when they release a new piece of hardware, the entire world has no choice but to pay attention. And right now, there is one piece of hardware that is more than just a product. It has become the engine of modern civilization. Meet the H100. It doesn't look like much. A block of metal and silicon, intricate and dense. But this is not just a computer chip. This is a concentration of power unlike anything we've ever seen. Each one of these units costs $40,000, and Nvidia can't make them fast enough. The waiting list is over a year long. The most powerful nations and corporations are in a frantic bidding war, desperate to get their hands on as many as they can. Why? Because the H100 isn't just a component. It is the key that unlocks the future. The artificial intelligence revolution we are all living through, it runs on these. Every major AI model, from ChatGPT to Midjourney, was trained and now runs on tens of thousands of these chips, networked together into colossal supercomputers. To understand its power, you have to think on a different scale. A single H100 contains 80 billion transistors. That's more than 10 times the number of people on Earth, packed into a space smaller than your hand. It can perform quadrillions of calculations per second. Not billions, not trillions, but quadrillions. This is a level of computational density that was pure science fiction just a few years ago. This isn't just about making things faster. It's about enabling things that were previously impossible. Training a large language model on older hardware could take years. With a cluster of H100s, it takes weeks. This dramatic acceleration in training time is what has unleashed the Cambrian explosion of AI we're seeing today. It's the difference between drawing a blueprint and actually building the skyscraper. These chips are now a geopolitical asset. The number of H100s a country possesses is becoming a direct measure of its technological strength and future economic power. They are the new oil, the new steel, the fundamental resource upon which the 21st century economy is being built. And one company has a virtual monopoly on its production. So when the architects of our digital future, Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, need to build their next generation AI, they have to make a call. And on the other end of that line is Nvidia. This brings us to the core of the dilemma. The biggest, richest, most powerful technology companies in the world are in a position they despise. They have no choice. Imagine you're the CEO of a company worth trillions of dollars. Your entire future strategy, your path to growth, depends on being a leader in artificial intelligence. Your competitors are investing billions racing to build the most powerful models. To compete, you need the best tools. And the best tool, the only tool that truly matters at this scale, is the H100. So you go to Nvidia, checkbook in hand. They tell you the price is $40,000 per chip. They tell you the wait list is 18 months long. They tell you the terms, and the terms are non-negotiable. What do? You can't go to a competitor because there are no viable competitors. AMD and Intel are trying desperately to catch up. They are years behind, not just in hardware performance, but in the software ecosystem, that CUDA garden we talked about. Your entire army of developers is trained on CUDA. Your billions of lines of existing code are written in CUDA. Switching would mean setting your progress back by half a decade, a death sentence in the AI race. So you pay. You pay whatever Nvidia asks. You place an order for 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 chips, spending billions of dollars, and you get in line. You are completely at their mercy. This is the reality for every major tech player. They are fueling their own dependency. With every $1 billion they give Nvidia, they are funding the research and development that will create the next generation of chips, the H200, the B100, that they will also be forced to buy at an even higher price. Nvidia's gross margin on the H100 is estimated to be over 90%. It is one of the most profitable products in human history. They aren't just selling chips, they are selling access to the future. They have created a system where they are the sole gatekeepers. It is a strategic masterclass, a trap sprung over 2 decades. But this wasn't an accident. It was a plan. A meticulous, long-term vision executed with ruthless precision. This technological masterpiece wasn't designed by a committee of board members. It was the vision of one man, a man who started in a roadside diner and bet everything on a vision nobody else saw. To understand the empire, we must understand the emperor. It's 1993, the year the internet becomes public. Journalism rolls onto the big screen, and in a humble diner booth in San Jose, California, 3 engineers sketch out a vision on the back of a napkin. Their dream, to build a company that would revolutionize computing forever. They had no idea just how right they would be. The man at the center of this dream was Jensen Huang, and the company they founded would become Nvidia. Today, Nvidia is a titan, a trillion-dollar behemoth that powers everything from blockbuster video games to the artificial intelligence that is reshaping our world. And at its helm is still Jensen Huang, a figure as iconic as the company he built. But to understand the empire, you have to understand the man. And to understand the man, you have to go back to that diner. Jensen, along with his co-founders Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, were veterans of Silicon Valley. They saw a future where graphics weren't just a niche for gamers, but the very engine of computation. They pooled their life savings, a modest $40,000, and set up shop. Their first office wasn't a gleaming campus, it was a cramped condo. They were scrappy, hungry, and driven by a singular belief that specialized chips, what we now call GPUs, were the future. Their early days were brutal. The tech industry in the 90s was a gladiator pit. Dozens of companies were fighting for a piece of the 3D graphics market. Many were bigger, better funded, and had more resources than the tiny startup called Nvidia. Their first product, the NV1, was a commercial failure. It was too ambitious, too complex, and the market wasn't ready. They burned through most of their cash. It looked like the end before it had even begun. This is where you see the first glimpse of Jensen Huang's true character. Faced with near-certain bankruptcy, he didn't panic. He didn't give up. Instead, he made a decision that would define Nvidia's entire culture. He laid off over half the company, a painful but necessary move to survive. But he also did something extraordinary. He personally called every single employee he had to let go. He explained the situation, apologized, and promised to do everything in his power to bring them back when the company recovered. It was a moment of profound leadership, one that forged a deep sense of loyalty and trust. Then, with the company on life support, he went back to the drawing board. He learned from the failure of the MV1. The next chip, the Rive 128, was simpler, more focused, and perfectly timed. It was a runaway success. It put Nvidia on the map and provided the capital they needed to grow. It was a lesson Jensen never forgot. Survival depends on focus, agility, and a willingness to make incredibly tough decisions. As Nvidia grew from a struggling startup into a major player, Jensen himself became a unique figure in the corporate world. While other CEOs were seen in boardrooms wearing tailored suits, Jensen cultivated a different image. He became known for his signature black leather jacket. This wasn't just a fashion choice, it was a statement. It projected an image of a rebel, a rockstar of the tech world. It said, "We are not like the old guard. We are different. We are the future." This look became synonymous with Nvidia's identity. It was cool, edgy, and spoke directly to their core audience of gamers and tech enthusiasts. While competitors like Intel were seen as corporate and staid, Nvidia was the brand with an attitude. Jensen wasn't just a CEO, he was the charismatic frontman of a technological revolution. He held product launches not in stuffy conference rooms, but on stages that felt more like rock concerts, complete with dazzling light shows and thunderous applause. He'd walk on stage in his leather jacket, and the crowd would go wild. He wasn't just selling chips, he was selling a dream, a lifestyle, a vision of the future powered by Nvidia. This image, however, belies a much deeper and more intense philosophy that drives the company. While the leather jacket projects confidence and swagger, Jensen Huang operates with a mindset he describes as 30 days from going out of business. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's the core operating principle of Nvidia. He instills in every employee a sense of constant paranoid urgency. He believes that in the fast-moving world of technology, complacency is death. The moment you believe you've made it, the moment you stop running scared, is the moment a competitor will eat your lunch. He tells his teams that there is no legacy, no past success that guarantees future survival. Every single day they have to earn their place. This philosophy explains Nvidia's relentless pace of innovation. They don't just release a new product and rest on their laurels. They are already working on the next 3 generations, constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. It creates a culture of high performance and intense pressure, but also one of incredible achievement. It's a culture where people are expected to question everything, to challenge the status quo, and to never, ever get comfortable. Think about it. While other companies hold long, drawn-out strategy meetings, Jensen famously keeps his direct reports to a minimum and his meetings short and to the point. He doesn't believe in rigid hierarchies or long chains of command. He wants information to flow freely and decisions to be made quickly. He believes that the market is the ultimate judge, and the only way to win is to be faster, smarter, and hungrier than everyone else. This 30 days from failure mindset is the invisible engine that drives the Nvidia machine. It's the reason they were able to pivot from just being a gaming company to dominating the fields of data centers, professional visualization, and most importantly, artificial intelligence. When the AI boom began, Many companies were caught flat-footed, but Nvidia was ready. Years earlier, Jensen had made a massive bet. He saw that the parallel processing power of their GPUs, originally designed to render complex graphics in video games, was perfectly suited for the massive calculations required by AI models. He invested billions of dollars into developing the software ecosystem, called CUDA, that would make it easy for researchers and developers to use Nvidia's hardware for AI. It was a visionary move that nobody else saw coming. At the time, Wall Street analysts were skeptical. They saw it as a distraction from their core gaming business. But Jensen held firm. He was playing the long game. He knew that AI was the next great technological wave, and he was positioning Nvidia to be the one selling the surfboards. When AI exploded into the public consciousness with models like ChatGPT, they all ran on one thing: Nvidia GPUs. Suddenly, the company wasn't just a component maker. They were the essential foundation of the future. The bet had paid off, and it paid off bigger than anyone could have ever imagined. This journey from a diner napkin to a trillion-dollar valuation is a testament to Jensen's unique blend of vision, showmanship, and relentless paranoia. He built a company in his own image, bold, innovative, and always running like it's about to fall off a cliff. He understood that in technology, you are either the one doing the disrupting, or you are the one being disrupted. There is no middle ground. And for 30 years, Nvidia has been the disruptor. The result is a company that is almost unbelievable in its dominance. Today, Nvidia controls over 80% of the market for AI chips. It's not just a lead, it's a monopoly. Their technology is the bedrock of the modern world's most transformative industry. From self-driving cars to drug discovery, from climate change modeling to the next generation of the internet, it all relies on the computational power that Nvidia provides. They have become the arms dealer in the global AI race, and business is booming. Jensen Huang has built the perfect money-making machine, but every empire has a fatal weakness. And for Nvidia, that weakness is located on a tiny island that sits at the center of the world's most dangerous geopolitical flashpoint. We have spent the last 3 chapters exploring how a company that started in a roadside diner became the most important corporation on the planet. We have looked at the genius of Jensen Huang, the invisible trap of the CUDA software, and the sheer power of the hardware. But now, we must face the uncomfortable reality. We must look at the cost of the foundation, because for all its trillion-dollar valuation, and for all its dominance, the entire Nvidia empire rests on a structure that is terrifyingly fragile. To understand the true scale of this risk, we have to look thousands of miles away from Silicon Valley, to a small subtropical island in the Pacific, Taiwan. Here is the reality that Wall Street often glosses over. Nvidia does not actually manufacture its chips. Jensen Huang is the architect. He draws the blueprints, but he does not lay the bricks. The manufacturing, the actual physical creation of these atomic-level miracles, is handled by a single company, TSMC. This is not just outsourcing in the way a clothing brand outsources to a factory. This is a dependency so deep that it borders on an existential threat. TSMC is the only entity on Earth with the technology, the machines, and the know-how to build Nvidia's H100 chips at scale. They are printing circuitry that is smaller than a strand of human DNA. It is a level of precision that makes rocket science look like child's play. And currently, Nvidia has nowhere else to go. Intel cannot do it. Samsung cannot do it. This creates a single point of failure for the entire global economy. Think about the implications of that for a second. We are not just talking about a supply chain hiccup where your new graphics card is delayed by a month. We are talking about the engine of the modern world. If a geopolitical crisis were to erupt in the Taiwan Strait, if a blockade were to happen, a natural disaster struck, or God forbid a military conflict occurred, the supply of the world's most advanced computing power would effectively hit zero overnight. Economic experts have simulated this scenario, and the results are catastrophic. It wouldn't just be a bad day for the stock market. It would be a global cardiac arrest. The data centers training the next generation of AI models would freeze. The cloud infrastructure that runs our banks, our logistics networks, and our national defense systems would stagnate. The damage is estimated in the trillions instantly. This precarious situation is what political scientists call the Silicon Shield. The theory suggests that the world depends on this island so heavily that no superpower, neither the United States nor China, can afford to let the factories stop running. The chip foundries are so valuable that they supposedly protect the island from invasion, acting as a digital deterrent. But reliance is a double-edged sword. It means our technological future is currently being held in a delicate balance, resting on a geopolitical fault line that is heating up every single year. But let's step back from the geopolitics for a moment and look at the economics. Because when a company grows this fast, when a stock chart looks like a vertical wall defying gravity, only one word comes to mind: bubble. The skeptics are loud, and they have history on their side. They are drawing comparisons to the year 2000. They point to Cisco systems. Back then, during the dot-com boom, Cisco was the Nvidia of the internet. They built the routers, the switches, the shovels for the internet age. They briefly became the most valuable company in the world. Investors believed the internet would change everything, and they were right. But Cisco's stock still crashed by 80% and never fully recovered its peak highs. So the question must be asked, is Nvidia the next Cisco? Are we blinded by hype? Throwing money at a company simply because it is the flavor of the month? There is a critical difference between then and now, and understanding this difference is the key to understanding the next decade. In the dot-com era, companies were buying servers to host websites for pet food that nobody bought. It was speculation on potential. They were building infrastructure for customers that didn't exist yet. Today, the situation is radically different. The biggest companies in the world, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, are not buying Nvidia chips to speculate. They are in a desperate arms race to survive. This is what we call a CapEx war. These tech giants realize that AI is not just a feature. It is the platform shift of the century. They are buying H100s because AI is already doing the work. It is writing code, it is analyzing medical scans, it is optimizing energy grids, and it is solving protein folding problems that stumped biologists for decades. This isn't a bubble of hope, it is a bubble of absolute necessity. Even if the economy slows down, these companies cannot afford to stop buying Nvidia's chips, because stopping means surrendering the future to their competitors. It is a prisoner's dilemma where the only winning move is to spend billions of dollars on Jensen Huang's hardware. However, no tree grows to the sky, the risk remains. If the AI hype slows down, if companies realize that ChatGPT or Gemini isn't generating the massive profits they expected fast enough, the orders could dry up. And when a company is priced for perfection, as Nvidia is, even a small slip-up can look like a disaster. But perhaps asking about the stock price is asking the small question. We are missing the forest for the trees. The real story of Nvidia isn't about quarterly earnings, profit margins, or shareholder value. It is about a fundamental shift in the trajectory of human history. Jensen Huang and his team didn't just build a faster graphics card for video games, they inadvertently built the engine for a new species of intelligence. For 70 years, the paradigm of computing was simple. Humans programmed computers. We told them exactly what to do, line by line, logic gate by logic gate. If the computer made a mistake, it was because we made a mistake. That era is over. Now, thanks to the massive parallel processing power that Nvidia provides, computers are teaching themselves. We are no longer coding, we are cultivating. We feed data into these systems, and they learn patterns, logic, and creativity in ways that we often do not fully understand. We have built black boxes of intelligence, and Nvidia provides the energy that keeps them alive. This has given rise to a new concept, sovereign AI. Jensen Huang argues that every nation, every culture, and every government will need its own artificial intelligence to protect its data and its culture. He envisions a world where data centers are the new factories of the 21st century. In the past, nations imported energy to power their manufacturing. In the future, they will import silicon to manufacture intelligence. This brings us to the final verdict. Nvidia has effectively become the utility company of the future. Just as Standard Oil powered the industrial age, and just as Google organized the information age, Nvidia is powering the intelligence age. They have managed to place themselves at the bottleneck of civilization's next great leap. Whether you see Jensen Huang as a visionary hero who saw the future before anyone else, or a ruthless monopolist squeezing the industry for every penny, does not change the reality on the ground. He has won. He bet the farm when everyone else was playing it safe. He endured years of ridicule when Wall Street told him that accelerated computing was a niche market, and now he holds the keys to the kingdom. But with absolute power comes absolute uncertainty. We are handing over the reins of our economy, our creativity, and perhaps our strategic decision-making to systems running on these silicon chips. We are building a world where intelligence is a commodity, something you buy and plug into a wall, and the supply of that commodity is controlled by one man in a leather jacket, relying on one island in a turbulent sea. We stand at a crossroads. The decisions made in the next few years by Nvidia, by governments, and by us will determine the shape of the rest of the century. In the 1800s, the world was ruled by those who controlled oil. Today, it is ruled by those who control silicon. Nvidia has handed humanity the fire of the gods. The only question remaining is, will this fire light our way to the stars, or will it burn the house down? Thanks for watching.